Failure is an option here. If things are not failing, you are not innovating enough. If something is important enough, even if the odds are against you, you should still do it. Patience is a virtue, and I am learning patience. It's a tough lesson. Really, the only thing that makes sense is to strive for greater collective enlightenment. The first step is to establish that something is possible. Then probability will occur. It's okay to have your eggs in one basket as long as you control what happens to that basket. Persistence is very important. You should not give up unless you are forced to give up. Life is too short for long-term grudges. I think it is possible for ordinary people to choose to be extraordinary. You have to be pretty driven to make it happen. Otherwise, you will just make yourself miserable. People work better when they know what the goal is and why. It is important that people look forward to coming to work in the morning and enjoy working. Physics is a good framework for thinking. Boil things down to their fundamental truths and reason up from there. I came to the conclusion that we should aspire to increase the scope and scale of human consciousness in order to better understand what questions to ask. Really, the only thing that makes sense is to strive for greater collective enlightenment. Starting and growing a business is as much about the innovation, drive, and determination of the people who do it as it is about the product they sell. Brand is just a perception, and perception will match reality over time. Sometimes it will be ahead, other times it will be behind. But brand is simply a collective impression some have about a product. You want to be extra rigorous about making the best possible thing you can. Find everything that's wrong with it and fix it. Seek negative feedback, particularly from friends. When I was in college, I wanted to be involved in things that would change the world. Now I am. If you're trying to create a company, it's like baking a cake. You have to have all the ingredients in the right proportion. I wouldn't say I have a lack of fear. In fact, I'd like my fear emotion to be less because it's very distracting and fries my nervous system. My motivation for all my companies has been to be involved in something that I thought would have a significant impact on the world. My biggest mistake is probably weighing too much on someone's talent and not someone's personality. I think it matters whether someone has a good heart. You shouldn't do things differently just because they're different. They need to be better. I think life on Earth must be about more than just solving problems. It's got to be something inspiring, even if it is vicarious. The idea of lying on a beach as my main thing just sounds like the worst. It sounds horrible to me. I would go bonkers. I would have to be on serious drugs. I'd be super duper bored. I like high intensity. The idea of lying on a beach as my main thing just sounds like the worst. It sounds horrible to me. I would go bonkers. I would have to be on serious drugs. I'd be super duper bored. I like high intensity. Going from PayPal, I thought, well, what are some of the other problems that are likely to most affect the future of humanity? Not from the perspective, what's the best way to make money? Why do you want to live? What's the point? What inspires you? What do you love about the future? And if the future's not including being out there among the stars and being a multi-planet species, it's incredibly depressing if that's not the future we're going to have. If you get up in the morning and think the future is going to be better, it is a bright day. Otherwise, it's not. I always have optimism, but I'm realistic. It was not with the expectation of great success that I started Tesla or SpaceX. It's just that I thought they were important enough to do anyway. Don't delude yourself into thinking something's working when it's not, or you're gonna get fixated on a bad solution. Some people don't like change but you need to embrace change if the alternative is disaster. There's a tremendous bias against taking risks. Everyone is trying to optimize their discovering. If you go back a few hundred years, what we take for granted today would seem like magic, being able to talk to people over long distances, to transmit images, flying, accessing vast amounts of data like an oracle. These are all things that would have been considered magic a few hundred years ago. You want to have a future where you're expecting things to be better, not one where you're expecting things to be worse. I think that's the single best piece of advice. Constantly think about how you could be doing things better and questioning yourself. Don't be afraid of new arenas. I could either watch it happen or be a part of it. Work like hell. I mean, you just have to put in 80 to 100-hour weeks every week. This improves the odds of success. As much as possible, avoid hiring biz. MBA programs don't teach people how to create companies. I'm interested in things that change the world or that affect the future, and wondrous new technology where you see it and you're like, wow, how did that even happen? How is that possible? I would just question things. It would infuriate my parents that I wouldn't just believe them when they said something, because I'd ask them why. And then I'd consider whether that response made sense given everything else I knew. When you struggle with a problem, that's when you understand it. I say something, and then it usually happens. Maybe not on schedule, but it usually happens. If something's important enough, you should try, even if the probable outcome is failure. I think it's very important to have a feedback loop where you're constantly thinking about what you've done and how you could be doing it better. My mentality is that of a samurai. I would rather commit seppuku than fail. You have to say, well, why did it succeed where others did not? And we need things in life that are exciting and inspiring. It can't just be about solving some awful problem. There have to be reasons to get up in the morning. I think we have a duty to maintain the light of consciousness to make sure it continues into the future. The tough thing is figuring out what questions to ask, but once you do that, the rest is really easy.